Hi, I'm Marty Agather, Embrace Prevention Care. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Preventive Care Now for older adults. In this series, we focus on what we call the geriatric determinants of health. These include chronic disease care, medication adherence, medically directed wellness, geriatric care principles, and patient psychology. All of these contribute to keeping older adults healthy, in their homes, and doing what matters most to them. I've said my piece, so let's get on with it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Debbie Howard. I'm a Japan expert and a market researcher, and I'm also a caregiving advocate. So I'm very happy to be here today, and welcome.
And I am Linda Sherman. I am the managing editor of Boomer Tech Talk and the founder of the Rethinking Aging Club and the chief marketing officer for MBET Health Miracle Dressing Wound Care System. And I'm turning it back to Marty.
Thanks, Linda. Marty Agather, Embrace Prevention Care. Today, we're here to talk about frailty and how that is a huge contributor to the downward health spiral that's experienced by older adults. One of our features that we have here in the room is popcorn news. We get to that at the bottom of the hour. If you've got news events that you're interested in sharing and can encapsulate that in a couple of sentences, and you get me a link, we'll put them in the show notes. So as we talk about frailty, frailty is a common occurrence as we age, and there's 5 primary measures of frailty, but it's commonly expressed in 3 different dimensions: physical capacity, your ability to do physical activities; cognitive ability, your ability to process information; and quality of life. The worst information, unfortunately, is that higher measures of frailty directly correlate with decreased lifespan and health trajectory and increased levels of hospitalization. And the challenge when you get hospitalized and you're frail is there's potential for additional decompensation, meaning you come out of the hospital in actually worse shape than you went in, and also the potential for hospital-acquired infections, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago during one of our sessions. So the good news is that physical exercise has been positively correlated in rigorous research to improve all 3 dimensions. And so that's really good news. And so we're going to explore both of these areas with our 2 guests today. We have Dr. Zalan, a physician in the UK, and we have Doreen Hing, who is involved in physical therapy and using using motion to sort of strengthen and improve lives. So I'm going to ask Zalan first to introduce himself. Zalan, turn it to Doreen. You can introduce yourself, and then Doreen, if you'll turn it back to Zalan, he's got a deep dive for us on frailty and sort of how to look at that from a physician's perspective. I'm Marty. I've said my piece.
Thanks for the introduction, Marty. Thank you. Nice to see everybody here today. So my name is Zalan Alam. I'm a GP, family medicine doctor in Manchester in the UK, and I have a background interest in what we call intermediate care, which is that interface between the primary and secondary care world. And our focus in my other work is to do with rehabilitation, re-enablement, and elderly medicine. And I've been doing this role for over 6 years now as the clinical director for the service in the northwest of the UK. My work and my team sort of involved in this has won several awards for their work in re-enablement and getting people back to a higher level of function than previous. And also some of my other work is medical education, which as well as sort of a leadership and management role. I'm Zalan and I'm done speaking. Over to you, Doreen.
Hi, sorry, I couldn't find this button. Hi, yes, my name's Doreen Hing. I'm the founder of Anatomical Intelligence, and I've developed a movement education method that accelerates recovery and strength, and is particularly relevant for aging populations because I specifically designed it for, as I often say, grumpy old men because I felt like learning how to actually move and stand and sit. Nobody really wants to do it, especially older gentlemen, older populations, and people who think they know a lot about how the anatomy works. And even though they're struggling, they really don't. So the result of my method of produce it when they because what I do is I stabilize and optimize multiple joints in a nanosecond, and that affects multiple muscle groups and organs at the same time. And so there is an experience of rapid pain relief as well as physical strength at the same time. And so I've joined a lot of conversations on helping. Conversations on it, helping aging populations as well as rehab, etc. Because I feel like musculoskeletal health is often seems to be the lowest in funded area of the healthcare industry. There's a lot of assumptions that the education is okay as it is, and so I'd like to. That's what my interest. And I'm done speaking.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Doreen. So Zalan, I have a question for you. You had forwarded a presentation to me earlier. Are you going to walk us through that? And should I be trying to figure out how to get that on show notes, or was that just to sort of give me the topic that we were going to go over? Marty, done.
So, Marty, yeah, that's a good question. The presentation was something I sort of put together very quickly because I figured I could always reuse that at some other stage as well. It had some points which I thought you might want to take from it, particularly that one definition of frailty that I think resonated with you as well, and also some bits on the comprehensive geriatric assessment. So feel free to take the bits that you think are the most relevant, screen maybe a couple of pictures of those if needed, or even one or two are fine with me. It was just more of a reference tool for myself, but absolutely feel free to use it in any way you'd like.
Excellent, thank you. So rather than me stealing your thunder, why don't you start us with sort of a broad overview of how you and your associates look at frailty and some of the methodologies you use to combat frailty and take us where you want to go on a little bit of a deep dive. Thanks. I'm Marty. Done.
Thanks. So, for the purpose of this conversation, I wanted to focus on a couple of key points. The first one was, what are some of the definitions of frailty? And the other was to look at assessing frailty as well as the mention of what we call the comprehensive geriatric assessment, and also to wrap it up, really to look at some of the attitudes that people have about frailty and how we need to challenge those, and what interventions make a bigger impact. So that's just a couple of headline things for you all to keep an eye on. And if I've missed anything, please just remind me at the end so I can revisit it.
Certainly.
I think the most important thing from the perspective of this group, because it is an international one, is to bear in mind that these are sort of British references, particularly that I'm using. And obviously, there may be variations in your own countries and in your own regions as well, or even different towns, really. So I think the most important thing to start off with is a simple definition. Now, I wouldn't claim to be a advanced academic or anything in frailty. However, I think the simplest or the more technical definition of it is to do with sort of looking at, is one I took from a 2001 paper, and it talks about frailty being defined as an aging-related syndrome of physiological decline marked by vulnerability to adverse health outcomes. Now, it also mentions that there is no gold standard for detecting frailty. However, there is multiple frailty screening tools that have been utilized. And that sort of wordy definition is sort of just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. But the one definition for me, as somebody who was taught, and is something which I really believe in deeply, is that if I can't simplify something like that complex into a way that I could understand it or a layperson could understand it, it means I don't really know what I'm talking about. And there's a lovely definition of this, of frailty, by Dr. Patricia Cantley, who gave this explanation of how she'd explained frailty to one of her patients. And it's something which, since reading it in 2018, it's something I often use whenever I'm at this sort of barrier and people keep talking about words like, well, you're getting a bit frail. And people, the layperson's understanding of that might be very different than a clinician's. And the way she describes it is that you imagine a beautiful paper boat and it's sort of sailing proudly in the sunshine on a still pond. And that it's made of sort of whatever solid material there is, if it's steel and wood or whatever else. And it's quite sturdy. So basically, whenever the weather changes, the wind hits it, the rain hits it, it doesn't ever capsize or lose. It's always just there. And with time, the material that makes up that boat sort of starts to change. And it starts to get thinner and weaker in time. And slowly it becomes more and more paperish. And to the point that now, when the weather is good and there's no disturbance going around, the boat is fine. However, if a storm or a bit of wind hits it, it can capsize, and for that paper boat, it's very difficult for it to right itself. And if you can sort of picture that in your head, that is what we talk about in frailty in its practical terms. That is what you're seeing. That reserve, that ability for it to right itself is no longer there as much. And what does that look like from a clinical point of view? Well, from a clinical point of view, the simplest tool we tend to use for assessing that is something called the Clinical Frailty Scale, or other people call it the Rockwood score. And this is basically a simple score that if you were to see a patient and they've just had some sort of event happen to them, made them unwell, and you would ask them basically which of these categories from 1 to 9 do they fit in? And that would be how they fit in about 2 weeks prior. So we're looking at what their baseline is, not how they're in front of you, but what their baseline is. And it starts from number 1 being very fit to number 9 being terminally ill. And it's essentially a tool we use as just a glance, and it's basically on that glance and then asking that question how they were functionally 2 weeks prior, and it gives you a score to base it on. And that score is what you then use to target your approach to addressing those elements of frailty. Now, there are plenty of other scales as well, which go into a lot more detail, like the Edmonton score and other things. And those often look at us breaking it down to tasks specifically, or particular movements to assess levels of strength and balance, for particularly as ways of doing it. But for the purpose of simplicity, I would say the Rockwood or the Clinical Frailty Scale is a really easy one to use as a reference point. Now, that frailty score is only useful if you have something then that you can use as a way of assessing in more detail as well. And it has to be incorporated in something called the Comprehensive Geriatric Assessment. Now, the CGA, as they call it, is actually one of the very few evidence-based tools to show a definite improvement in frail patients' mortality or morbidity. And the reason why it's so effective is not because it's just this one special pill that you take and everything is fine with the assessment or anything else, but because what it does is it breaks everything down into little bits of an assessment. So it looks at everything from what your balance is like to how many medicines you're taking. It looks at everything from your how good is your eyesight to your hearing to your footwear. And it's sort of addressing the fact that frail patients often deteriorate because of lots of small insults. And sort of like, I would, in a sort of, I guess one way to describe it would be almost, death by 1,000 cuts. It's the small little things, all those little things that accumulate, that cause damage and make them more frail. And the CGA is meant to sort of define that. So it basically lists, for example, that, okay, we need to look at this person's balance. We need to do strength work for that. Then it'll say, well, we also need to check for their glasses. We also need to make sure they're on less medications because these medicines may no longer be relevant for someone, may no longer be relevant for this person because their body's physiological processes have changed as they've gotten older. And when you address all of that together, then you have a real sort of comprehensive plan. And that's sort of the basis of it. But I would say that the single biggest intervention that you can do with all of this is increasing the level of activity that the person does. Now, the way my practice has sort of worked is that we have done this by trying to intervene as early as possible in the illness process and start to get people to strengthen themselves as quickly as possible. And that would mean sort of the second they're on the one of our frailty beds, then we're trying to get them on their feet as quick as possible, having dinner and socializing with other people, trying to build up their strength, trying to make sure they're aware of what medication is going on, and trying to put them in a setting which is as close to home as possible in terms of how it feels, and in making it sort of a setting which will challenge them to be stronger and better. Now, that's sort of the crux of major interventions in frailty, and sort of we've looked at also the assessments, and we've also talked about the definitions. Now, just to give you an idea, once you get to sort of a frailty score of 6, for example, and from 6 to 7, the inpatient mortality rate jumps from a 6% to an 11%. And then from 7 to 8, from 11 to 24, so it's almost doubling at that speed. And your readmission rate in hospital also starts to increase significantly as your frailty increases, as does your length of stay in hospital. So using that CGA and trying to bring somebody's frailty score back up to, or lower down to, depending on what way you look at it, to the baseline or closer to like the 1, 2, 3 levels, will have a real impact on their overall, reducing the hospital stay time, reducing the chances of them dying, and reducing the time in hospital as well. So, I mean, I've covered all those major things, and I think one of the things I'd also want to just sort of stress in terms of all of this is that if you've been listening carefully, you might have noticed I've not actually used the word old, age, or given a specific age cutoff for this. And I think that's very, very important just to be mindful of, that there is no such thing in terms of frailty's correlation with people's chronological age. You can be relatively younger than the average age, but have more comorbidities or long-term conditions, and you could have other associated factors such as be of a background which is more socioeconomically deprived, have additional mental health issues which haven't been addressed, and that combination of things factors in and gives us your real sort of biological age. And that is the biggest predictor, rather than generic cutoffs that we used to have of anyone above 60 being old or above 65, because in the end, it's all these other factors that play a role in this. And I guess finally, the other thing I would say with this is you have to remember one thing with people who are challenging frailty, that ultimately there is a person behind this. So the body itself may be becoming more frail, but that doesn't mean the mind is. And these are often patients I've had who are incredibly interesting people with incredible range of skills, and their minds are aware that something is changing, but we often don't have that honest conversation with them about it. And I'll give you an example from personal practice, just a day before yesterday, where we were, I was just walking through our ward, and we do a lot of activities in our ward. We have like a large area where they can actually sit together, and we have an activities coordinator who sort of does a lot of work with our patients. And there was a group of sort of people in the late 70s, early 80s who were together, and all of them had recently been admitted in hospital and now were coming to us for support. And they were having to do some balance exercises and everything in these seats. Sorry about that. And so basically they were all they were doing some balance exercises and things. And the activities coordinator was trying to go through the list of songs that, just to get the rhythm going on for people to do these activities. And went through multiple songs, and the group kept saying no, no, no. And finally, they stopped at Michael Jackson's "Beat It" as their chosen song, which was, I thought, incredibly beautiful in the sense that these people were willing to push themselves to a fast-paced song. And it reminded me of the thing that these are people with active mind and who want to push themselves in that way. They want to be better, and we have an obligation to work with them and be honest about what's going on. And the final bit was just a little line of poetry from a poem which I think is very much, for me, linked with concepts of frailty, and that is, do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And with that, I think I've covered everything. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm Zalan, and I'm done speaking.
Zalan, thank you so much. That was fantastic. You walked us through sort of the reasons that frailty is a critical issue. That it's not only the physical, that there's a mind behind it. How important trying to reverse the effects, those effects that are causing the Rockwood frailty score, and how that ties into the CGA. You mentioned that music was important, and I want to turn that directly over to Doreen, because I think that's going to give her a great kickoff there. But I also want to give a nod to both Debbie and Linda, because I think you guys both have some relevant experience here. Debbie, you probably can talk to some of that. How do we begin to message to seniors, and how do we react as caregivers when we see this deterioration, and it's hard on us, but we know that we still have to persevere in our mission. And Linda, I know with Boomer Tech Talk and the 50 plus product room that you run, you've probably seen all sorts of devices and techniques and innovative ideas that are working in this area. So Doreen, I'm going to turn it to you, but before
Can I just say one thing about the pinned link that I put up?
Sure,
I
go ahead.
apologize for the name of it. It's a public preview, so it's not actually published on my website. But I just I had to find a place to put a couple of the doctor's charts. And if you go to the link, then I've put two of the charts that he was the key charts that he was using, identifying frailty and the severity of frailty as a predictor of length of stay and poor outcomes. So that you, and I'm sorry it took me so long to get it up.
No, fantastic. Are you kidding me? Thank you so much, Linda. With that as my preamble, I'm Marty. I'm finished. Go ahead, Doreen.
Hi. So I'm going to approach it from like some of the things which I've found to help with frailty and bringing awareness to falls. Do people know that September is National Falls Prevention Awareness Week? It was September 20th to 24th. That is organized by the National Council of Aging. I didn't know that, but I knew it was October is cancer, breast cancer awareness. So, and considering how prevalent falls are and musculoskeletal disorders are, and I didn't see anything with regards to that out there in media. So some of the things which I found in terms of like ideas to help with helping people move, and like Zalan mentioned, it's not an age. It's not defined by age. The musculoskeletal system starts to deteriorate in our 40s. So we start to lose muscle mass in our 40s, and that has a significant impact on our metabolism and on our ability to obviously to move and heal, etc. And so can expedite the decline of our bodies as we age. So it's really important, even though, I'm in the fitness and well-being industry, and I knew about strength and loading and improving my musculoskeletal, body. It didn't really, it didn't resonate. So the message is somehow not being made very clear. And I'm in the industry that we really need to take. We really need to help our bodies move better. So, and some of the innovative things which I found is that there has been an increase in kind of developing gyms so that they have more programs to help with encouraging seniors and come to the gym. Like I used to be a member of Equinox, and even Equinox is has a demographic that is potentially older. I was the oldest person there, I felt. So I don't see many people in the gym older than myself. And the New York Times mentioned that there should be a transformation in the fitness industry because the population over 60 is going to increase to 1.4 billion in the next 5 to 10 years, and most gyms service a demographic between 20 and 40, and so how to make gyms more like a playground and more accessible and relevant for I'm saying aging because I don't know a better word, or silver generation. There is also an organization which maybe some of you, maybe Linda or Debbie know, called Silver Sneakers, which partners with gyms and provides classes online as well as on site, and it's funded by Medicaid as well, or Medicare. I get confused between the two. Partially funded by that, so that it can allow for that demographic to go to the gym, because again, the willingness and ability to go to the gym, if there is actual classes specifically designed for that speak to that audience, and I think the most important, and both of those conversations really talk about creating the community as well. And then what else did I find as well? And a lot of the innovations seem to be in preventative and fall detection. I found a couple of companies like XR AI Labs, Tecticals, Safely You. They all seem to focus on prevention and detecting falls, and using AI to help with that. But the main thing is, the multi-causality of falls and frailties: gait, osteoporosis, inflammation, loss of functional capacity, fear of falls, visual impairment, impaired cognition, urinary incontinence, cardio, cardio health, fatigue, environment, medications, and depression. But the majority out of all of those things that can cause a fall and frailty, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of 13 things all relate to musculoskeletal health. And like I said, the Bone and Joint Initiative said that there is not enough investment in musculoskeletal disorders and solutions to help improve movement education. We all know there is, excuse my French, but there is a shitload of exercise and movement regimes out there which we all could be doing, and we know we should be doing, and could easily implement into our lives, and even for people, people who are suffering, but we don't do it. We don't. The compliance and the attrition is poor, and then that ability to talk and encourage people who are suffering and are fearful of their condition to actually move. That whole conversation needs to occur in that musculoskeletal innovation space, and I don't see much in terms of I haven't found much in terms of like really helping with the movement education part. Maybe it's just marketing, as Linda knows. I'm a big proponent for making marketing of preventative health more sexy and more exciting, even for seniors and the silver generation. We need to do a better job at that. So I think that's basically, and for me, rest equals death. And if it's active rest, then and showing people how to rest in an effective way that is really beneficial to their body is, and can be regenerative at the same time, is what I see the missing gap. So I'm done speaking, and yes, thank you.
Thanks, Doreen. That's a fantastic run through, and I think you've hit on a couple of things. For clarity, that Silver Sneakers program is in conjunction with Medicare, not Medicaid. So that, if anybody had a question, I did that research while you were speaking. Debbie, Linda, do you have anything that you'd like to say, or?
Well, I wanted to let Debbie know that I've loaded her her 3 fact sheets from the CDC up on into that same page, and so if she wants to refer to those in what she has to say, then she could do that. And
Thanks, Linda. You're so fast with that.
well, when you look
That's
at it,
amazing.
it's not beautiful at all, but at least people can click on it.
Well, great. Well, great. Functional is probably more important. Yes, there will be 3 documents you'll see in there, and I think, as a researcher, I always go for the numbers. So I just wanted to remind everyone that we have the CDC is reporting of 52 million let's say 65 plus adults, there are 36 million falls in a year in 2018. That's a lot of falls and 8 million injuries. And they're expecting that by 2030, that will go up to uh, 52 million falls and 12 million injuries out of 73 million people. So they're not predicting that the falls will decrease. They're basically going to be on track with population, aging population increase. So anyway, falls are a really, really big problem, and that's why we're talking about them today. And they do cause hospitalizations. And right now, in 1 year alone, the medical cost for falls related injuries are about $50 billion. So, you know, and there is also an increasing death rate from falls. The death rate from falls has increased by about 30% in the last decade. So those are just a few of the facts and some interesting things you can get from those three PDFs that are in the show notes. I just from a caregiver viewpoint, I wanted just to mention how important it is us as caregivers of our parents and other loved ones to be observant. And, we all like to think our loved ones are the same and as powerful as they once were. But, even if you just look at yourself, I can tell at my age, at 67, that I am not as strong as I used to be. And I'm having to work harder to, fight for my right to party, right? I have to keep walking and moving to maintain this reduced level of functioning that I see I have. And that's true for all of us as we get older. It can't be helped. So, one of the things caregivers can do is to be really observant and realistic about what's happening with your loved ones and have a conversation with them. Number one, talk with them about it. See how they're feeling. Are they getting dizzy when they stand up? Are they consciously moving slower? I think a lot of us, as we get older, we want to move as fast as we always did. And sometimes your mind moves faster than your body is able to. I've had older people tell me that actually in some of my talks. And so I think talking with your loved ones as a caregiver and being observant and having those conversations is really, really important. Encouraging them to stay active. One of the exercises the CDC is recommending is Tai Chi, but we also have obviously light yoga, chair yoga, even a little bit of walking. And Doreen is an expert on this, how to keep yourself active and moving. I think the third thing I would recommend as a caregiver is to look around the space itself and think about what can we do to make this space more age friendly and safer. And these are things like removing trip hazards. Throw rugs are horrible for older people, and clutter in the floor, installing grab bars in the tub in the bathroom, making sure the lighting is very good on stairwells. And there's a whole brochure on check for safety there in the handouts that you can review. But it's really important to look at the space itself and see if what can you do there to make that a little bit safer and more user friendly. And then the fourth thing is before I go on to the fourth thing, when you're talking to your loved one, it's good to think about eyesight. Are the glasses and the prescription for the glasses still actually the right prescription? Because the eyesight needs to be good in order to help avoid falls. Meds need to be calibrated because meds often get off kilter with each other and can cause dizziness. And also, when people are depressed and have osteoporosis, there's a higher risk of falling as well. So these are all things that a caregiver can observe, look for, and watch out for, and even talk with the healthcare provider to make sure your assessment is on target. And the fourth final thing is monitoring. And I know that many of us as caregivers want our care receivers to wear a life alert or some kind of monitoring device. And many times our aging population does not want to use these because they're not very attractive, and they're a sign that you need to be monitored. So there's a psychological resistance to it as well. So, but it it's really important to have the conversations about those and make sure that if you can get somebody to wear a monitoring device, that's a way that if they do fall, we could identify that they had fallen and actually help them. They are developing wireless monitoring devices these days, so we're going to get there. Um, I don't know how far away that is, but I can tell you I've already seen some prototypes. And there are also really interesting things for the space, like lights that are sensor activated. So let's say an older person gets up out of bed in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, the light will sense the movement and come up and give them the light they need to safely find their way to the bathroom. And it all happens automatically. So there are already some really interesting and helpful products out there. I've also seen a wonderful product from Israel called Gate Better that literally trains aging people as to how to be more reactive in the way and more proactive in the way they're walking. And I think it was Zalan who mentioned in the beginning about the physical, the cognitive, and the quality of life. Um, you know, this Gate Better product literally puts a sensor on the person's body, and they're on a treadmill, and it you're walking on the treadmill and it puts things in your way like a puddle or something you have to step over, and you have to react to that cognitively as well as being on the treadmill and moving. You are actually strapped into something so that you cannot fall. But I think it's a fantastic way to train and rehabilitate our aging members of our population so that they can walk better. And they have amazing metrics about how uh, when this was designed for rehab originally, but now it's being brought into the normal daily practice. And they have the metrics that show that when you go through this training for 8 weeks or so, you absolutely have better balance and stability as you're walking. So I think there are lots of interesting things coming along in the way of prevention, and I wanted to make sure to use that word because that's what we're all about in this room. And all of the things that I mentioned today are preventative measures that we as caregivers can take on behalf of our care receivers. This is Debbie, and I'm done for now. Thank you.
Jill, I think you were up on stage first. So we'd love to hear your comments and any questions you've got. Go ahead.
It's nice that you pronounce it very nicely. Am I audible?
Yes. Oh, yes,
Am I
you
Yes,
are.
audible?
you are audible. Yes.
Thank you very much. Because the distance is a little bit on the higher side from India. Uh, okay. So I feel that after the age of 35, people have to think about the strengthening of their body parts by doing some strength training exercises. As the corona hits, the physical activity has been reduced, and I am working with the old age people. I feel that with the help of both the movement and also the strength training is important for them to gain the muscle strength. And sometimes, most of the time, I feel that the confidence is something which most of the people lacks, especially the older age people. One fall or two fall have a very negative effect on them. So there has to be a psychological factor working on them so that it will be having a positive thing. I think that am I audible to you all? Thank you. Give me the space.
To Jill, absolutely, and you emphasize a number of points. First of all, the need for strength training after 35 aligns very closely with what we heard from Doreen. the falls. I have an interesting anecdote. Our nurse was working with a patient last week and inquired about falls. And she said, well, yeah, I fell, but since I wasn't down for more than 5 minutes, I don't really count that as a fall. Well, the nurse begs to differ. So thank you for your comments. We're very happy to have you join us, and please come back. Next up, I think we lost somebody, but I know Susie's been here for a while, so go, Susie.
Thank you, Marty, and hi, Doreen, Linda, and Debbie, and Zalan. Very interesting room. I've been working in the area of falls prevention, especially technologies for that purpose, for the last 4 years. And have a homepage with the products for it. And it's really interesting, Debbie, what you were saying. Oh, I have a couple of comments for it. One of them was the instructions to really make the home surroundings for the old person, make them safe. But actually, quite interesting. In care homes, they're suggesting that they're removing rails because it makes the residents more lazy, and they want to nudge them to keep being able to walk on their own. So it's a little bit like the coin's two sides. In one side, you want to prevent them from falling by making them as strong as possible. But on the other hand, if they are not strong in that situation, you want them to have surroundings where they don't fall in a serious and bad way. So sharing some experiences from Denmark, we actually have fall alarms as a 100% of the people who are giving care in their own home. They are actually having a alarm device that they walk around with all the time, so that they can call help if they fall. Unfortunately, you also, Debbie, absolutely right that people feel that they are stigmatized. They don't like them. They're uncomfortable. And my own mother, when she was 90, she actually fell in the bathroom, got a major concussion, and was on the floor for 4 hours before she, on her back, pushed her way out of the bathroom all the way to the room where she could push the alarm on the wall that was there as well, because she of course left the fall alarm. So it's a really huge dilemma how to deal with this. But I think that coming into how we make preventive care, that is, I think, as everybody has said, we just have to keep healthy and fit the best we can mentally and physically. And a little interesting sharing with you, there's a Danish company called Didi Rehab. They actually managed to take down the time spent on care for a group of elderly people with 2/3 by people using an app where a caregiver would train with them 2 times a week. So instead of increasing cost over a couple of years period, they would actually have decreasing need of care. So this is actually extremely interesting when we talk about preventive care. So Rehab, digital rehab just put together. So digital rehab is something I really, and a solution similar to that, extremely interesting. Another thing that's just right now building up in Denmark is actually a guy called Matthias. He's in Clubhouse as well. I tried to ping him in here, and no, he's not here yet. And he is both a high level judo fighter in his spare time, but he's also done an education as an, I don't know what you call it in English, but it might be functional therapist. And he has combined those two with making a training program for old people and for blind people on how to fall in a safe way, because that's the first thing you learn in judo. You have to be really good at falling without damaging yourself. And they have actually managed to get to the largest elderly organization in Denmark that have, now hold your horses, it has 1/5 of the Danish population are members in this organization, the elderly organization. And they are now making classes with judo And he does it the way that people will start with laying down, and then they will sort of do the fall in reverse, and that makes even blind people safe in this. So this is just some inspiration from Denmark, where new things are happening, and it's wonderful that we have new solutions coming in this space. And I hope that we can help keep helping each other to be inspired on what to do about it. Because talk is wonderful, but I'm so amazed about all of you making real things happening out there in the real world. So thank you for having me on stage in the room. Susan from Denmark, thank you.
Susie, as always, it's our pleasure to have you join us, and thank you so much. When you say Digi, is it D-I-G-I, Digi Rehab? Oh, is that correct?
I will write it in my bio.
Perfect, thank you. We'll get that up in the show notes, everybody. And we've been joined on stage by Brett. Brett, as I recall, you're doing some app-based physical therapy products. Is that accurate? Or tell us a little bit about yourself and share with us, please. Marty, finished.
Oh, thanks. And thanks for having me, Marty. Yeah, I'll give the short version best I can. I am building a voice assistant to help people do physical therapy at home that walks you through all the exercises, all the pacing, counts, everything like that. And part of my inspiration for it, I don't normally talk about this. I normally tell my story, but part of it is that my father, who passed away a few years from cancer, was, went through a lot of chemo, lost a lot of strength, and I watched as he did not do his physical therapy. And I'm not claiming my app would have solved it. I think that he had other reasons why he didn't do it, but I just watched him, my father, who I was powerful, all that stuff, your typical father figure, go to where I had to help him on basic stuff that I won't describe here. But so, I'm very interested in this space and interested in how we can uh, provide preventive care for people as my own generation starts to get older and we like technology. What are the things we can put in place to help our parents, but also ourselves and our kids? So that's me for the moment. Brett Adler.
Excellent. Thanks, Brett. And did you have a specific question for one of our panelists, or you just wanted to share the fact that this is an area of opportunity?
I was just going to share that, but I will ask, what people have seen or thoughts on how things like these, voice assistants at home and smart speakers and all that may be able to help with that preventative care. Just curious what else people have seen. So, Brett Heather, done speaking.
Marty Agather. Linda, this is right up your alley. I think maybe you can respond to Brett about sort of how you think voice assistants could benefit in prevention and physical therapy and sort of all of the stuff warding off frailty. Marty, I'm finished.
I don't have a treatise on voice assistants for this. I'm really sorry. I think Debbie might have that. Debbie?
I'm sorry, I don't have anything on that either. I know they're really working on it, but I don't have any specific good examples.
I don't know that I've got specific good examples, but I'll certainly share. My mother is at the stage where we're starting to deal with both cognitive issues and recently frailty and falls. She fell, in the past 6 months, she's fallen 3 times, twice with very serious, actually now a fourth, but anyway. So we are looking at the possibility of putting Alexa or Google Voice in place to help her with medication adherence. So,
Oh, you just mean not a particular app or software, but a basic voice assistant
yeah,
for help.
yeah.
Is
In
that correct?
my instance, yes. But if you've got sort of what the current thinking is on voice assistants, we'd love to hear that as well. It doesn't have to be specific to any one product.
I remember hearing, I can't remember the name of the company, but it was a gentleman who, for aging population, he was doing programs through the TV and physical therapy through the TV. I don't know if anyone remembers who it was.
I remember that too, Doreen, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like that would be, then that would create community. And then if you had a fall, you could call out to your network on the TV, your TV buddies. But anyway, I can't remember the name of the company. So, but but I would like to connect with Brett too, as well. Thank you.
I think it might be Video Link.
Video Link is the name of
Yes.
an app.
Video Link is an app that you as relative can have where you can call your aging relative directly on their television without them having to push any buttons. Is that what you're thinking of?
No, it was much more robust a program where it had physical therapy, it had classes, and I'm assuming that it would have a communication um, protocol too, but I can't. But I
If
can't.
I may, in the article that I just published in Boomer Tech Talk for resources for caregivers, there is a slideshow from Benjamin Sermi where he goes through the tech toolbox of everything that a caregiver should have at their fingertips, and it's very well done. You have Karen Etkin's age tech map, but that just has logos of companies. Benjamin has put it together where you can really take a look at each of the technologies, and I think that you'll find a lot of valuable things in there, as well as the other caregiver resources that Debbie Howard has assembled in the PDF, downloadable PDF that we have in this article. So since I have snuck in Boomer Tech Talk as a pinned link at the top of the room, when you're on that website, if you just go to the homepage, you'll see the latest article there in the column Caring for Your Parents. And there's so much good stuff in there that we did in a room on in Rethinking Aging on November 4th with 19 different presenters on all of these tools and tips and so forth. So I apologize that I don't have right at the top of my mind exactly what Marty was asking for, but there's a lot of really good stuff in there. And Marty's also going to be putting that article into his show notes.
That is
So
absolutely
they'll
correct.
take you directly there.
That's absolutely correct. I've already got it on my screen.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Preventive Care Now for older adults. Browse show notes to find other episodes, check our calendar to see upcoming dates and times, and join us on Clubhouse if you can. We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Peace.